Ethan Skolnick here on the 5 Reasons Sports Podcast, as always, with Chris Whittingham. But today, instead of being separate, we're up in Jupiter at Marlins Spring Training, and we're sitting here, and I want to make sure I get this right because pronunciation is always important. It's Monte Harrison.
Correct.
Look at that. Yeah. And I'm terrible with that stuff. So good to have Monte Harrison out here. Just got in some swings over in the cages. I want to start with you here because this is one of the exciting prospects for the Marlins coming up this season. Of course, he was acquired about a year ago, I guess it would be, in what is sort of known as the Christian Yelich trade. You also come along with Lewis Brinson and 2 others. But let's just sort of go back to the beginning with you a little bit. When did they first put a bat in your hand? How old were you, and why did you take to this sport the way that you did?
I was about probably like 4 or 5 years old. My mom kind of just did it just to keep me out of trouble. I didn't really know what it was, but just kept playing, and then it grew love into it, and then I decided to make the decision to come play baseball.
And when, because eventually you were going to play football too, and we're going to get into that a little bit with you. That obviously started a little bit later, I would think. When did Mom let you go out and start to play football?
Football was later. I can't honestly remember what age I was when I started playing football. It was probably 3rd grade or something like that. But I started playing it. I was always a physical dude, so I wanted to hit people. So I started to play that. I loved it, right away. And then
why'd you want to hit people?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't know. It's just some frustration, I guess.
And you grew up in Missouri, for people who don't know. So as you're starting to play baseball, were there particular role models that you kind of looked up to at that stage? Obviously, St. Louis tends to be a place where baseball is king in a lot of different ways. But
No, I didn't really look up to anybody. I mean, I watched certain players, but baseball wasn't really a thing when I was young where it was the first thing I looked at. And then once I started understanding, actually playing it, traveling more to different places, I'm like, oh, there's more than just baseball in Missouri. You know what I mean? So I really started to open my eyes. I started watching Adam Jones, Andrew McCutchen, those type of guys who got big caliber guys, and seeing myself in the game, and I was like, dang, man, I could really be on that stage, you know what I mean? But it really started to grow on me, and I started to take a little hone into it and loving it.
You mentioned McCutchen. That's a question I want to ask you because whenever we've had sort of African-American baseball players on the podcast, one of the things we talk about is that over time there have been fewer and fewer sort of role models to look up to in that space because the game is kind of – a lot of those kids have sort of gravitated towards basketball or to football. But so for someone in your generation who's closer to Chris's generation, more sort of that millennial generation, what was it tough to kind of find those examples? Because you mentioned Kutch is one that comes up a lot for a lot of people, but it's not like when you go back 20 years and you had Dave Winfield, and you had every team had 6 or 7 prominent African American players on it.
Honestly, it was kind of difficult just because there wasn't very many. I mean, Andrew McCutchen, Adam Jones, Andrew Jones. Who else can I think of right now? That's. I feel like that's the problem. You can't really name very many people that are stars that are out there like that are African Americans. But I'm definitely trying to change that culture. I'm definitely trying to get African Americans back into the game of baseball. Because it's not a game. I mean, I understand that it has its perks where it's a little different, slow. People say they don't get you the girls or anything, but man, I don't know. It's just something about this game personally that when I play, it's just a lot different. You know what I mean? And it make things. It's just a blessing to be able to play this. And I knew as soon as I stepped foot on this field, I knew what I wanted to do. The first day I stepped into pro ball, and things happened in my life. But man, I can't take anything back from choosing this game.
So, all right. So I want to talk about that choice because we mentioned that other athletes go in other directions. So, what was that thought process for you? What were your prospects in other sports, and in the end, how did you settle on baseball?
My thought process through the whole thing was a little bit more different than everybody else's that plays the game of baseball. I actually had to choose from 3 sports technically, but I knew basketball.
What was the third?
Basketball, yeah. I knew basketball wasn't going to be one of those where it wasn't really going to be, I would say, an option, but it was an option. But I told them young when I was like a junior or something, I didn't want to play basketball. But then it came down to it, and I really had to ask myself, what can I see myself doing for the next whatever years? What's really going to make me happy? And coming down to that, asking my parents and playing the game at the time, I sat down. I was just like, man, let's see the pros. This was by myself, so the pros and cons. I don't like going to football practice. I don't like being in that type of environment, heat, where you got to deal with a whole bunch of egos and maniacs and stuff like that. But every time I stepped foot on the baseball field, it was just like, man, I was so happy. And then I always wanted to have a bat in my hand. I always wanted to go to practice. There was never a time where I was like, man, I don't feel like going today, you know what I mean? So I really took that into consideration. I was like, all right, I know what I want to do. Of course, like, you know, you have to have your money situation, stuff like that. It has to take you away from my situation of going to Nebraska. But the Brewers did a great job of being able to do that. And ultimately, I made the right decision. I know I did.
Yeah, I feel like we make that decision right now. It's being talked about with Kyler Murray, deciding playing football. That we make it about something bigger, right? Yeah. That football offers this and baseball offers that, and sometimes it just comes down to a personal choice. It seems from your vantage point, you just liked it better.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I mean, his situation is so much different just because he was on two really big stages. You know what I mean? Being taken so high in baseball, and then potentially being taken high in football. You know. Being a Heisman Trophy winner, who a kid I know, especially being in the A's organization, I wouldn't want to go from Heisman Trophy winner to going to Beloit, Wisconsin. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know where his head's at. I don't know him personally, but only advice I can give him, just choose whatever was going to make you happy. If football's going to make you happy, go play football.
You mentioned Nebraska, which is not a small stage, obviously. I mean, you would have been potentially a big star there in a place where they fill that place with 90,000 people. Were there any Saturdays that you watching the TV and you're thinking, man, maybe I should have done that? Maybe I should have
Probably, I thought about it the first couple games where they popped on TV, and I was just like, dang, what if I would have went to Nebraska? But then I would show up at practice at 3 o'clock, and I'm like, yeah, I made the right choice. I don't want to go to football. But, yeah, there's definitely some times where it was kind of hard, especially going into 15 where I had a lot of things happen in the 15 year, and I was just like, dang, man, like, this is crazy. Like, I could have easily been playing football right now in front of 90, 100,000 people and not having to worry about anything. But everything happens for a reason. I know I came into this, and it's going to be a journey. I'm still growing. I'm still growing as a man, and I like those challenges. Challenges are key in my life. I've always had those, and it just makes you grow every single day.
Tell me about two challenges that you've had to overcome and how you've done
it. Two challenges, probably one of them was when my grandma died. She died actually in May in 2015, my first full season. And then just over the years of struggles and the injuries, I've never been a guy that was very, they would say, injury-prone, stuff like that. So when I got hurt those 2 times, I was like, man, like, what is going on? I never had these problems. So having that level where I had to get back to knowing myself and who I was from high school, really telling myself, like, man, these are just freak injuries. Like, it just happens. You can't control it.
What were the injuries, if you don't mind me asking?
I broke my ankle. And look at it popping right now. Jesus. I broke it in, July of 2015. And then my hamate in 2016. And just bouncing back from those, it was very difficult because people were just like, oh, you get hurt once or twice. And like, oh, he's injury prone. But I came back that offseason. I was just like, man, there's not going to be anybody that's going to be able to tell me I'm going to work the hardest. I'm going to outwork everybody. I'm going to play the best on the field. And I came back that 17th season, and I had a really good year. And you can grow from that, you know what I mean? So I went into the next offseason and did the exact same thing. And got fortunate, got to play 136, 37 games. And only missed one game because our manager was like, you're not playing today. And in my mind, I take a lot of credit of being on the field every single day. I want to play 140 or 162 games, you know what I mean? I want to be able to be accountable. Be like, well, he was on the field the whole time, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you mentioned, what was that city in Wisconsin that the Oakland A's organization plays in?
Beloit, Wisconsin.
Beloit, Wisconsin. So what are some of those minor league experiences? Because one of the things that you mentioned it, as it relates to Kyler Murray, that it's that minor league life that is, when you're going from playing at the top stage, maybe being the first pick in the draft, and going to play, for an NFL team, as opposed to in the minor leagues, you've got to earn your stripes. So what were those earning of stripes periods like for you?
Helena, Montana. That's not a place where you want to play either. I mean, not as bad as Beloit. Actually, it was as bad as Beloit, Wisconsin. But I didn't get to spend much time there just because that's where I broke my ankle. But I've never told anybody this, but I was actually happy when I kind of broke my ankle to get out of Helena, Montana. So I was like, yo, I'm out. Peace. But, other than that, there wasn't really no other cities that were really bad. I mean, we visited some cities that was like, whoa, Beloit.
So is the Applebee's in those places? The Applebee's is the nicest place.
The nicest place, period. Like that's the best you're gonna get. Cracker Barrel's second. Like that's the best you're gonna get. If you want to go to a nice restaurant, you go to Applebee's. I mean,
so what do you order at Applebee's?
Man, I don't even know. That's the thing. I was just like, bro, I'm just going to my room. I'm not even gonna eat. But I usually just eat stuff at the field, whatever they have at the field.
Yeah. But in terms of the bus rides and all that, and I mean, I imagine there are stories for days. Like, what's like your go-to? I was in the minor league story.
No, in Montana, in Helena, that we took bus rides that was like 13, 14 hours. So you just like, what do I literally do all day? Like, you literally wake up at like 4 in the morning, get on the bus at 5, and you're there till you get there at like 6. So you just like, what do I do on the bus all day? So a lot of Netflix, a lot of movies, a lot of talking trash, playing cards, stuff like that. But good thing about it, we had a very good group of guys who were very we got to know each other so well, and over the years we got to play with each other, and I still miss those guys over there. But it made it a lot easier when you got people around you who care about you and are doing the same thing and going through with you. So it made things a lot easier.
You have been described as a 5-tool player. Mm-hmm. All right, so tell me the one tool that you have, that you think is most significant in terms of where you're going to ultimately be as pro, and what is the one of the 5 that you think you need to develop the most?
That's the thing. I don't try to limit myself at all. I don't try to give myself the best tool or the worst tool. All my tools can be equivalent. It doesn't matter what it is. Every time I step on the field, I'm trying to put all those into display. So I really don't like those type of questions when people ask me that. I mean, no offense to you, you know what I mean, but every single one of those tools, and even the 6th tool, they talk about my intelligence, being able to talk about the game and the IQ of the game and stuff like that, and put that on display when I step on the field.
Well, that 6th one's important because I want to talk about that because I think one of the things that this franchise needs right now ultimately is going to be leadership on the field, because you have so many young guys coming up at the same time and everybody's kind of trying to feel their way a little bit. So how do you balance that? Because I'm clearly just talking to you, you're a confident person, you have a sort of a gregarious personality, like you're not a wallflower. It's obvious, like 5 minutes with you, right? So how do you balance that at the same time as you're still trying to get to the big league level and be, what you want to be, which is a 150-plus game player at this level and a productive player? How do you balance that with the other guys you're coming up with at this time?
Just you got to know your limits. You got to know who you're dealing with. You got to know your personnel, the type of people that they are. How do they react to things? How do you get good responses from them? How do they break down? You know what I mean? So it's just kind of sitting back and watching how other people approach them. I tend to feed off. You can learn by other people's mistakes. You make one mistake, don't make 2 mistakes. I was always taught that my whole life. You know what I mean? So even those dudes that we have in the clubhouse, like Martin, Miggy, those dudes who've been in the big leagues for a while, Granderson, Neil, dudes that just talk, listen to what they're saying, and really hone in. All right, if they're going to approach somebody, how are they going to approach it? All right, he just approached somebody about this. All right, as a young dude, I can do the exact same thing. Just because I'm young doesn't mean that I potentially can't be in the same situation that they're in, making those strides, being that leader. And I see it as our CEO. He got handed it to him, the captain, when he was at a young age. So why not? It doesn't have to be an age thing. It's kind of just like one of those things where if people are going to respect you, you're going to have to be firm with them. You're going to have to do the right thing. You have to do it in the right way.
Go back to our episode. Want to introduce you to another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is Berlitz Broward. This is the best place to learn a language in South Florida. I can speak to it personally. My daughter, already fluent in English and Spanish, we decided to introduce her to Mandarin. She's not even 5 years old, and she's already out speaking Mandarin, knows all of the numbers up to 100, and she loves it. She loves to go back because the way that they work with her, the way that they teach her, and they also work with me as a parent with her schedule to make sure that it fits in with everything else she's doing. You can also learn languages as an adult. They teach many different languages there. Again, English, Spanish, Mandarin, Italian, German, right across the board. They teach virtually every language that you can possibly name. Here's the number that you call, 954-743-0077. That's 954-743-0077. Mention that 5 Reasons sent you. They'll take care of you. Never too early to learn a new language.
How hard is it to be patient? Because this game, more than any other, requires patience. It requires patience during a season. It requires patience as you're moving up the ladder, as you're dealing with pitchers adjusting to you and you adjusting back and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume you want it to be now. Like, if I was asking right now, you're out there, you want to be, in the outfield at Marlins Park now. How do you balance that?
You balance by just praying, man. I mean, honestly, my time is going to come when my time comes, and when that time comes, I'm going to be in a position where I'm ready to play. You know what I mean? So, patience is a thing where it's very hard for people. Very, very hard. It was hard for me when I first got in the pro ball because you're like, man, like I'm going to get to the big leagues in less than 2 years, blah, blah, blah. You hear a lot of people say that. And I was one of those people who said that. And then I went through some struggles. I had my things, and it helps you grow. You have to go through certain things in order for you to grow, not just on the field. And I actually had a kid come to me the other day. It was like, I'm going to be in the big leagues by this. I was like, man, you just got drafted. Like, be patient. Like, do your time. Like, let it come to you. Don't try to force it. There's some learning curves you got to go through. And honestly, I tell him that, and even me, I still have things I have to learn. Even when I make it to the big league, there's always a time where you have to learn. Right. If you're not learning this game, then you're going to be out of the game very fast. So I take pride in that, be able to step on this field and not take anything for granted.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned the IQ and the intelligence aspect of it. Yeah. So when you say that's a part of your game, describe the ways in which you either watch a baseball game or study tape or whatever the case may be that's different to how I would watch a baseball game. What are you seeing? I
have to ask you, what type of how would you watch the game?
I'm just watching to see what's going to happen, frankly. Like, and I'm not really, working out a pitcher's game plan. It's just, he threw a fastball and then 1-2 we tried a curveball. Like, I'm not. So how are you watching a game that's different?
That's different. Yeah, the way you guys look at it, you guys just see the game. Oh, he's on ball strikes, hits, no hits, outs, strikeouts. The way I see it, I try to pick somebody on the field that somewhat similar to me, and I try to watch them the whole game. How do they go about their business? How are they being pitched? How are they doing in this certain situation? Runner on first base, what are they trying to do? And moving them, doing what they're supposed to do with the ball. How are they in the outfield doing their reads and throwing the bases, backing up bases, little stuff like that, that a lot of people can't do. You know what I mean? I mean, it's very hard for me to go to a baseball game and sit at a baseball game. I'm not going to lie to you, I mean? But it's very easy for me to see on TV ABs and stuff like that. But when I'm at a game, usually for the first 5 minutes, I try to hone in on that and try to really focus.
So when you say people that are players that are similar to you, who do you look at in the major leagues? And is it by position, or do you look at specific players and go, I think that player is a bit like I am?
Kind of position, but also at the same time body types. I usually tend to look at the power guys. I know Mookie's not a guy that it doesn't look like me, but speed, power, a guy who can do that. So I look at him. How's he getting pitched? He's one of the best hitters in the game. You know what I mean? So Mike Trout, how do they go about their business? How can all these things, all these guys? I take little things from each person and it translates to me. And just a little bit over time, I've gotten better and better at it.
You know what's interesting, and again, maybe this comparison doesn't fit, but when I've sort of read stuff about you and kind of your skill set, it reminds me a little bit of a guy who played for the Marlins for a little while, who we know, we've had him on the podcast. When Cliff Floyd came up, he had have you heard that before? Because he was always described as a five-tool guy, had injuries early in his career, and he ended up becoming a very productive player, but it derailed him for a little bit of time. But that's just sort of a comparison that sort of jumped out at me, and he had some pretty good years here. I want to ask you a couple other things that I mentioned at the very start, and this is always going to happen because whenever a player is traded for somebody else, it comes up. Yeah. And so last year, you guys come down here, you and Lewis, and I know Lewis has struggled through some things. I want to ask you about that because maybe what you can take from that. But, the guy on the other side ends up breaking out, winning the MVP. Yeah. Do you look at that as, in some ways, a positive, a marker on sort of where you want to get to? Does it not affect you at all? How do you sort of perceive are you honored to be in a trade for a guy who won the MVP? How do you view that?
I mean, you can't say that it's not an honor because at the end of the day, that value, he had his value when he got traded, but then he did that, so it kind of bumped it up a little bit more, so it kind of hikes us up. But it also brings the pressure up to us performing and making it and getting a lot out of it. But at the end of the day, I don't know Christian personally, and none against him. I'm not very worried about him. He's with the Brewers and I'm with the Marlins. So if I ever meet him, I'm going to be like, yo, I was that dude you got traded for. But at the end of the day, I can only focus on myself and how I'm going about my work and the dudes in this clubhouse. How can we get better and how can we help this team down the road get to championships and win championships?
And what do you take? Because I mentioned Lewis, who obviously came in with a lot of expectations last year, and he got the opportunity right away, and obviously didn't go the way that he wanted. Don was talking today about how, this year's a little different for him, that it's, may not be quite the rope that there was last year.
Yeah.
Have you talked to him at all kind of about what he sort of went through as he got to that level? Because that's the level you're going to be breaking through too.
Yeah, I did talk to him. He gave me some good insight, and just to know that he did have that patience. They gave him that patience at 18, and he was just like, man, one of those things where if you just try to slow the game down as much as possible, you can't let outside of things affect you. And then it starts affecting on the field stuff. So he had a lot of things going on, and he got hurt. He came back and he started doing a lot better, you know what I mean? So it was kind of one of those, he felt free. And he was like, man, get to the big leagues. He was like, you're in a short time period where baseball is limited. Don't take this game for granted. I was like, man, like that's exactly like what I'm trying to say, like how I feel about this game, you know what I mean? I want to step onto the field and get the most out of it, you know what I mean? But looking at him and his struggles, how can I take that, no offense to him, like how can I take that and not have it happen to me, you know? How can I get to the big leagues and boom, bust onto the scene? We got the same body type, same tools, so how can I learn from him? A guy who gets a lot of sliders and stuff like that, how can I put my position to learn from that and not fall into that trap of being that guy?
Hello, friends. This is Josh Appel from Smart Your Territory.
And I'm Mr. Bill 11.
And we are officially on the road to WrestleMania. It is point at the WrestleMania sign season, Bill.
If you need to get to WrestleMania, we can be your Uber drivers on the road to WrestleMania.
I mean, what? You ruined it. You ruined it.
I like it. I think we could make some money doing that.
WrestleMania season is here. Stick with us here on Smart Your Territory, the 5 Reasons Sports Network's Pro Wrestling Podcast.
And one of the things we were talking about in the clubhouse just now is with Neil Walker about how, because I asked him, was there a thing, you're around a lot of young players, is there a thing you wish someone had told you? He said that it was more just about having fun and enjoying all this. And that's something that I imagine on Lewis last year, when you're going through that struggles, you probably don't feel like you're having fun very much.
Yeah, that's literally what he said. He felt like his back was against the wall, like. And then he came down to Double-A, he rehabbed, and he was just like, I was like, bro, Brinson, like, when you go back, just do you, like, be loose, be free, go about your work like you normally do, but, like, bro, it's baseball, just go have fun, like, don't try to, like, listen to other people, like, just do you. And he was like, I know, man, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to do that. And he came back, he did it, and he comes back to spring training, has the same attitude, the same effort, and hopefully goes into the season and does his thing.
This, I've been covering teams in this market for a long time.
Yeah.
This is one of the periods of time where there isn't really a team that kind of stands out. The Heat are not where they were. The Dolphins have struggled.
Yeah.
The Canes kind of had not such a great season. This town needs a star, because Dwayne Wade's done in 2 months. Yeah. It needs a star. I'm just maybe getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but do you think you can be that?
I just don't want to be a star. I mean, this is not about me. This is an organization thing. It's not just the people that are on the field, on the 25 people that are on the active roster, you know what I mean? This is going to come down to dudes in the minor leagues and everybody who's from the GCL up or DSL up. This is not just a me thing, you know what I mean? If we all can shine and we all can show as an organization that we can be big and that we're potentially we're going to be great, especially when you talk to the people in the front office that the things that they're putting out there, the type of investments they put in this organization, it gives you a lot of confidence to know that we're going to win in the future. And then I don't want to put all that on me because it's not about me.
Final one here. One conversation with Derek Jeter so far that has stuck with you?
Honestly, I don't really have everything he says to me. I really try to hone in on it. He just honestly just tells me, just gotta go out and have fun and work your ass off. You got a short window in this game. He was lucky where he got to play 20 years in the big leagues, and I think about all the time, like, can I be somewhat close to that number? And I just try to go about my work every single day and have pride in it, and then whatever happens, where I start in the big leagues beginning of this year or whenever, when I hit it, the culture's gonna change. I'm gonna play my ass off.
You were born in 96, is that right?
95.
Yeah. So you were basically born when he broke in.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, so I mean, that's, growing up, you seen him,
Right.
And a guy who's done so much in baseball, who's been a good guy off the field. I mean, to have him as a CEO is crazy. Just to know I can go to him and be like, hey, yo, Derek, like, what's up? Like, and that's not very normal for people, and I'm very blessed that I get to do that.
And you are, what is? Give me 2 years from now. What We're having a similar conversation here in Jupiter. Where is Monte Harrison?
Monte Harrison's in the big league, helping the big league team win, helping those guys in the locker room be the best they can be, pushing them, keeping them accountable, and winning championships down the road.
Appreciate it. Check out the rest of our Marlins coverage all during spring training. Obviously, we'll have a bunch of people, whether it's Cinco Razones or us or Swings and Mishes with Craig Mish. We'll be covering this team all season long. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Five Reasons Podcast. Thank you so much.